Hey guys, this is Brendan McCauley, and on Thursday this past week, on the 8th, we were actually fortunate enough to see Daymond John. And if you're not familiar with Daymond John, he was on Shark Tank for quite some time, and I believe he still is. And honestly, coming from a guy who doesn't watch a lot of TV, I don't watch a ton of Shark Tank. I have seen the show a couple times here and there, enough to recognize who he was, but I didn't really know his whole backstory. And I used to go to FAU. I graduated last August. I got my MBA in business administration. And what they do is a lot of times for events, they'll shoot out flyers to students, to anyone in the continual learning education center, or they just put out flyers. And I believe I got one probably about 6 months ago that Daymond John was actually going to be speaking this past week. So I was very excited just to see, what knowledge could I get from him. Maybe what things can you throw out there, like little tidbits, little nuggets, or maybe even just, reaffirming things I already know. And I will say going to this speech was amazing. I love to be able to hear, for lack of better terms, a rag to riches sort of story. Some guy who came from more or less the projects, I believe, in Queens, and I have everything on my notes, so I'll make sure I confirm, exactly from where he came and kind of like the steps that he went through. But my mom had also gotten a flyer, and she's like, Brendan, do you want to go? We'll go check it out together. We'll do like a little date night out of it. So it went fantastic. We ended up grabbing dinner over at Seasons 52. Phenomenal place, by the way, if you've never been. So I highly recommend it. And what I did was I took a whole bunch of notes. And even if stuff that you think that you don't need to jot it down, write it down, because in your subconscious it just implants it even more, and you always have something to kind of come back to, as opposed to if you just go, you listen to a speech. There's some statistic, but I think you forget like 80% of what they talk about within like the first couple months. So when you go back and you can jot down notes, and even if I go ahead and I record this now, not only does it give value to you guys for for whatever reason if you weren't able to attend, but it's also valuable to me too, because then I can come back, I can watch this after, and all these little things I'm going to spit off just makes it that much fresher in my mind. So without further ado, let's go ahead. I will hop into my notes and we'll just jot down and run through this. And pretty much just to give you the back concept, if you don't know Daymond John, he's the one who created FUBU. Now, to my knowledge, FUBU is not super popular anymore, but it was when it first started. And the couple of notes that they made about him, I believe he or his company's worth $6 billion. Recently, in the New York Times, he had created, I believe, The Power of Broke is the new book he had come out with. He was Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and there was so many other awards and recognitions he'd got. Honestly, it was hard for me to keep up. But the guy's done very well for himself, and he has 1 or 2 children now. And what he was talking about first was, he said the fundamentals of business are always the same. And he wound up bumping into a kid one time who had said, Daymond, can you help me get into the rap music industry? And Daymond's like, I don't know if I can do that. I basically sell t-shirts. And anyway, so they go out to the parking lot and they're waiting for the valet to come. And this younger kid ends up getting a car driven around up to the front that's even more expensive than Daymond's is. And Daymond looks at the kid and he basically is like, well, you don't seem to be doing too bad for yourself. Like, what are you doing? And the kid basically, what he does is he takes a piece of paper, all right, or like a white sheet like this or something, and he does sped up versions of crazy types of artwork, and he has like 100 plus, or what was it, 100,000 followers through Instagram. And what the kid does is he'll draw the stuff out, he'll make some sort of advertisement with like a squeeze page that says, if you want this drawing, it'll only be available for the next 24 to 48 hours, place your order now. And what he does is basically he goes on every Monday, records this, draws it out, gets all these orders and shipments in by Tuesday, and then for the rest of the week creates one screen plate template of whatever the drawing is, puts it on all these t-shirts, sends it out, and repeats next week, and just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, and uses the power of social media and sharing and all the rest of this stuff, which the guy does over $1.2 million a year strictly through social media stuff and utilizing his talents in art, because he's decided to take care of a business that just brings in like ridiculous amounts of cash flow, and he loves doing it, and he's fabulous at it. So and there's actually if you guys get a chance, check this out. I think it's Porfirio, Porfirio Jimenez, and he does spray paint artwork. Coolest thing ever. But just to watch what this guy can do, and he's got thousands of subscribers. So go check that out. It's kind of neat. But basically, the concept is that the fundamentals are the same. That if you can promote yourself and you have a high quality product, that eventually you can create your own business literally from scratch. And now in this electronic digital age, you can do amazing things, have a fabulous amount of wealth, and do very well for yourself. The things that he was here to talk about, he spoke about spirit, he spoke about drive, ambition, and how to think like a shark. And he also spoke about the value of volunteering. And what I didn't realize is that 50% of his staff had actually started off as interns. And apparently you cannot work for Daymond John or one of his companies if you are not already either in college or have been in college. He spoke about the power of broke and how 60% of all those who hit either some type of lottery or win a bunch of cash typically lose it after 3 years. So the principle that he wanted to do was go over the 5 shark points, and it was an acronym SHARK. He was actually born in Brooklyn, over in Queens, and he opened his first business at 6 years old. Now, given this was, a little kid and he was just trying to make some money, but he had that mindset. And his first job was actually making $2.25 handing out flyers as his first job. Now, the reason why I thought this was interesting is because every entrepreneur that you guys see started out somewhere, and most of the times they made shit money. Okay, $2.25 an hour is a really, really good example of that. That being said, the biggest thing that you can do is learn from your mistakes. So if you make the mistake, learn from it, try it again. Make the mistake, learn from it, try it again. Plan, do, review. That's one of the biggest things I tell all my clients. Plan, do, review. Try it. If it doesn't work, try the next thing. And Daymond John is a shining example of that. Quotes that he said: responsibility must be taken. It's not given. Again, money is not success. Money is just driving up to your problems in a Bugatti, which I thought was pretty funny. Success is being a great father. Success is being a mentor. Success is volunteering. Success is helping. His role model, I believe he said, was Russell, I want to say it was Russell Simmons. I'm not too familiar with the older hip-hop stuff, but just to give you an idea, Russell was the founder, creator, the person who found Run DMC, LL Cool J, and the Beastie Boys, and I'm sure a number of others. As far as an entrepreneur, he said entrepreneurs are ones that thank everyone for their success. They are the first in, they are the last out. Now, what Daymond noticed was an opportunity, because when Daymond was growing up, he wanted to get into the hip-hop business, but he didn't quite know how to break into it. And he saw trends. And what he noticed one time was he had like a massive, I don't know, something like 30,000 people, 100,000 people. And he looked out in the audience and he saw everyone clothing-wise was wearing all very similar kind of stuff. And the one I caught that he mentioned was, just Adidas, but nobody had really put a spin on it. And the thing he threw out is like, Timberlands, very popular boot, but at that time it was really just made for like a hard worker or somebody in some type of construction job or whatever the deal was, but it was never branded. And what his goal was, he's like, well, if I can brand some type of clothing or logo in an upcoming hip-hop industry, then bam, he's got it. And that's sort of where his idea and concept had turned around. And the terminology he used, he said his life had turned from black and white to Technicolor. And let's see. So his first first letter in the acronym was S, and S was to set a goal. We often let people set goals for us. And he made a comment by Oprah who said, we become what we think about most of the time. And I've heard that quote and that saying a number of times from a few other people, but he mentioned that that one had come from Oprah. Before it was called FUBU, he actually called it Bufu. And apparently, play on the letters, again, another mistake. He learned, turned it, flipped it around, and eventually came out with what he wanted. But what his first sort of real nugget was that in 1989, it was on a Good Friday. It was about 39 degrees outside. And what he did was he was trying to manufacture a couple hats. So he found this one really cool looking beanie sort of deal. And he brought it home. He drove like 40 or 50 miles to go buy this thing. He's like, he brings it home to his mom. He's like, Mom, I got like a cool, like legit hip hop hat. This is what I want to do. And again, I'm sort of paraphrasing this. So if this is not exactly how it came out, I apologize. But his mom's like, look, and I think he spent something like $100 or $120 by the time he was done with gas, taxes, tolls, the material and everything. So his mom goes, look, go buy $40 worth of materials and I'll show you how to make these beanie hats. So he goes out, buys $40 worth of materials, comes back, and he's got all these beanies. Now he's sitting, it's 39 degrees outside on Good Friday. He sells $800 worth of beanie caps. So he's like, all right, he's definitely onto something. And ironically enough, on his drive home, he ends up rear-ending somebody, and guess how much the accident costs? $800. So, hard lesson learned, but the point is he knew he was onto something. He knew he could definitely go somewhere with this. He mentioned your assets are what feed you, your liabilities are what eat you. Most expensive advice is bad advice, and poverty of the mind is forever. And those are just a couple of quotes and sayings that I thought were interesting. So in order to ramp up his operations a bit, he ended up going and spraying $300 worth of advertising, and he used to spray it on gates outside of business owners' shops all along the street. So he started getting creative, over the years and just trying different things and seeing what works. And I think a lot of us do that on a day-to-day basis, especially if you own your own business, or you're trying to start your own business. It's like, how do I use Facebook advertising? How do I use Instagram? So this was his Instagram. This was his Facebook. He didn't have all the social media sites at the time, so spray painting on the side was a great way to get the FUBU name out there. All right, let's see. So actually, the first one he had spoke with was LL Cool J, who was becoming really popular. And LL's first recommendation was that he needs to create a list of people that he should stalk, that Daymond should stalk, that he should go after. And ironically enough, Daymond gets all his buddies together, and they're like, well, you know what? Let's just stalk LL Cool J and see if we can throw some FUBU stuff on him and just see how it goes. And it's cool. I got a picture of that. And I got a bunch of other photos from the event. But basically what they did was they caught LL Cool J coming from his house, about to hop in a limousine and take off. And Daymond goes up to LL. He's like, LL, look, I need a favor, man. Can you please just take my FUBU shirt, throw it on you real fast? And LL was basically like, look, I don't really like how your brand looks and blah, 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 and all the rest of this stuff. But he's like, I'll do it. And, just make sure that you don't forget me when this thing blows up and goes big. So, long story short, he's got this really old school camera. I mean, like 1920 looking thing. And he's got one chance to set up a perfect shot. He throws on a FUBU shirt on top of LL, stands back, takes the picture, and he nails it. So, kind of fast forward. Let's see. He says, so two things. One, we can't react. We must respond. And number two, Daymond likes to say, I stay on the cutting edge of change. Now, let's go on to the next one, H. So H out of Shark is for homework or analytics. And the biggest thing he always says is just make sure you do your research. Know what you're getting into. The biggest tip that I got from my finance teacher is do not play a game when you don't know the rules, when you don't know how things are supposed to happen, because that's when you lose. Anyway, so let's fast forward. So he takes the perfect picture of LL with a FUBU shirt on. And there winds up being this massive convention, big symposium, whatever you want to call it, that they have in Las Vegas. And they basically get all the who's who's in there, and that's where all the important stuff happens. Well, he winds up taking this picture of LL Cool J, sneaks into the Las Vegas Symposium conference, winds up selling over $300,000 worth of shirts. Okay, wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place. Sold $300,000 worth of shirts. And anyway, so they start driving back, and they're sitting there like counting the money. They're like, oh, 100, 200, 300. They don't have any shirts to sell. All right, so minor issue. And he's like, okay, well, now we need the money in order to be able to do it. So he gets turned down by 27 banks, okay? Not 5, not 10, not 15, not 20. 27 banks turn him down to try and get the capital to start up their own factory and to get this running. And basically, after the 27th one, he finally gets it, takes his entire house and turns it into a factory. Literally puts a lien on the house, sell every ounce of furniture that was in there to come up with as much capital as they could to buy the equipment, to get all the stuff. Says, look, we're going to do $300,000 worth of orders. We need some place to do it. Let's go. And what he winds up doing is almost getting his house foreclosed on, because the 90-day term finally comes around and he doesn't yet have the money to be able to shell out for this $300,000. So he almost loses the house. And the one thing his mom tells him is two things. Number one, you just need to ask for money. You need to ask for financing. And he's like, fine, let's do it. And her, her recommendation was you need OPM. And for those of you who know what OPM is, it's not just other people's money. He said there were a few other things that can go into it as well. And I thought this was really interesting. He says other people's manpower, other people's mentors, other people's mistakes, and other people's mindset. Okay, so there's multiple ways that you can use that abbreviation. Long story short, he winds up putting out this flyer, and he gets 33 people call back for the advertising on the flyer that he put out. And he said he kept it really short, really sweet, and I believe I even took a picture of it. But, promised to do $300,000 in orders, need immediate finance, like, guaranteed returns or something along those lines. Well, most of them were not qualified. A lot of them really, weren't serious about it. But he does wind up getting a call back from Samsung Textile Division. Okay, they want to do a massive distribution deal. And here's the terms they put out on the table. They basically said, Daymond, we need you to do $5 million in sales in the next 3 years. Otherwise, deal's dead. You need to pay us back for whatever we lost, so on and so forth. He winds up selling $30 million in 3 months. Okay? Wow. I mean, that's just, incredible. But that was the drive, that was determination that he and his team had, and they were able to do this. So funny part, fast forward a little bit after that, now the Gap wants to get in on it, okay? And so the Gap reaches out to LL and to Daymond. They're like, look, you know what, LL, do me a favor. We want you to be on the Gap, we want you to promote it, and, we'll pay you, we don't care what it is. And LL's like, well, I like to wear my hat backwards, and I like to dress like this, and I like to say this. And they're like, sure, you know what, no problem. Whatever you want to do, just get your ass over here, do a quick 30-second, minute rap, whatever, go home, we'll pay you. Great. Well, part of the H in the homework and analytics is they did not realize that when LL stepped on and he started spitting out his raps and his flows and whatever else, at the very end he threw in there, for us, by us. And that's, if you don't know, that's what FAU stands for. And what they did not pay attention to is that when he threw that in there real quick, they decided to run with the ad. They spent $30 million to run an ad that had FUBU in it. Okay? Two things happened. Number one, everyone working on that ad basically got fired by the Gap. All right? You need to be paying attention. But number two, which was even more interesting, was that the sales for Gap went up by 300% because kids thought that they could buy FUBU at the Gap. The following year, or I don't know, or like within that same time period, they reran the ad for another, I believe it was $60 million. Just to rerun the commercial. So the power of branding and getting out there, and it paid off great for Daymond because that just, it was a fluke, but it just happened to happen, and it worked out really well for him in his favor. The next thing he said, the only thing that every successful person has in common is A, which stands for amor, or love. And one thing that, he commented on was a lot of times when you have a business, and your investment in the business starts to rise, a lot of other things eventually start to sink, okay? It's just kind of that measuring tipping scale. And what he noticed is that between the 5 houses and the 2 kids, that went down as his business and his influence and hanging out at parties and getting to know famous people started to go up. And he lost a lot of stuff. The one thing I think my takeaway from that is that you need to be conscious of, your work-life balance. And I know a lot of times, especially if you are an entrepreneur, if you are trying to start your own business, if you are trying to be creative and really get yourself out there, be mindful that, if you have a spouse, or if you have kids, if you have other responsibilities, if you have, even just your family, don't let that stuff fall by the wayside. And I understand it can be very easy to do that. And I've been guilty of it myself, and I know I've done it. Like, I've gone into my computer and I'll get laser focused for 6, 7, 8 hours, whatever it is, creating a web page, talking to people online, doing social media stuff, whatever the deal. So just remember that you have other duties and responsibilities that you need to take care of. And for Daymond, a lot of this stuff, he found that out the hard way. And his wife basically was like, look, I'm going to make you a deal. What I want you to do, and because her comment was that strategic partnership starts at home. And she said she wasn't going to see anybody else, even though she had left him and left with the kids and all the rest of this stuff. But she said, Daymond, what I need you to do is I need you to start mentoring and paying it forward and do great things for other people. And finally, he started doing that, and he was able to maintain a relationship, I guess a relatively decent one with his wife, and still be able to see his kids and everything. But he learned that the hard way, and unfortunately, I think a lot of other people do as well. So, he is human, and it does happen. So he starts giving some advice to other people, and he does, films just like this. He sets stuff up. He does one-on-one interactions. He does, different types of videos and commercial stuff, whatever. And the guy that came up, Mark, I don't recall his last name. I'll see if I jotted it on here. But he created The Apprentice. He created Contender. He created The Voice. He did an overseas one called Dragon's Den, which I believe is coming to the U.S. He wanted to create Shark Tank. Well, he had seen Daymond doing these speeches, doing these commercials, doing these advertisements, and doing this mentoring stuff. And he actually reached out. He said, Daymond, look, I got this Shark Tank show coming up, and I want you to be on it. And actually, ironically, at the time, I think Daymond was starting to work with the Kardashians. And they were doing really well for themselves. They're doing something like $400 million per year or something along those lines. And eventually they said, Daymond, we appreciate you coming on, but we don't think the Kardashians is the right fit for you. So Mark, and I want to say, I know I had jotted it down somewhere. But anyway, so Mark gives him a call back. He's like, so, Daymond, I hear you don't have a job anymore. And Daymond's like, yeah, pretty much. And basically Daymond winds up hopping on the show and gets on Shark Tank, and he's been pretty much doing that ever since. Mark Cuban, I believe that was his name. Something interesting about Shark Tank that I didn't know. So actually, after they wind up closing the deal on the show, it can take 3 to 6 months to complete the deal and to finalize it. And I believe he even said some of the pitches on Shark Tank can take upwards of 2 hours. And the funny part is they'll take a 2-hour pitch by, like one entrepreneur after the other and condense it into 8 minutes. So we only see a fraction of the length of time that they sit there and have to listen to this. And it's very similar to the other shows that you guys have watched, like American Idol, like when you see the best of the best or the worst of the worst, or, you see one person hop on stage, when they come up and say, hi, my name is so-and-so. They sing a great thing. Then Randy, then Simon, then Paula, they all go, and then it's off to the next person. Each one of those people can take a good 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, depending on how it goes, and they just shrink it up. So there's a lot behind the scenes we don't always see. What he did say was that we don't invest in companies, we invest in people. And a lot of times, I think some people just don't grasp the concept that you can have the best product. You can put it at the best price. You can put it on the best shelf in the store. But if you don't have the personality, if you aren't that kind of person that people want to be around, then most times they won't care. Companies that, would love to be able to hire a person like you who's able to be imaginative and to be creative and to invent, awesome ideas that no one's ever seen before. Well, if you have a terrible personality, if you're not an open kind of guy, if you're not willing to be a leader, if you're not willing to step up, and, that's why I always harp on personal development is one of the best, most crucial things you can do, because it puts you in a completely different mindset, a lot of which, Daymond talks about. So just being in the right mind is huge, and that's why he invests in people and not companies. R in Shark is remember, you are the brand. The brand can establish itself through a period of time. Let's just take the Four Seasons, for example. They've built a solid foundation that when you say the word the Four Seasons, everyone's like, oh, but that's because that's what they've established. Now, if you walk into a Four Seasons, they're fortunate enough they have a name behind them, but, a lot of times so let me back up. So if you have the Four Seasons, you walk in and let's just say there's a really disgruntled employee, or say like the receptionist is having like an awful day, a terrible day, and you go in, and she's mean to you, she's rude to you, doesn't give you the time of day, is not helpful, just snotty, not nice, whatever, then at that point you might say, okay, well, maybe it's just the employee, it's not the Four Seasons. But for other places that haven't been around, or especially if you're trying to open up your own spot, or be your own entrepreneur, you're the face of your brand. Okay, so when you guys look at me, if I came up, and let's just assume I had hair, my hair looked terrible, I looked super tired, like I just had no energy, like everything around me just looked like that, then that's a representation of me as a brand. That says, okay, well, this guy, Brendan, he's a black kind of guy. He just doesn't care. Whatever. But, and the same thing goes for you guys. How do you present yourselves? You are what the person first sees. So let's just say another hotel, like a Sheraton or something. You can walk in, and if the reception's great and super friendly, I link that person with the name of Sheridan, with the name of Hilton, with the name of, name it, Doubletree, I don't know, whatever hotel you normally like to stay at. It's the same thing for you guys. So however you present yourself on a day-to-day basis, remembering that you're the brand is critical. He says, can you describe yourself in 2 to 5 words? Or how would other people describe you in 2 to 5 words? Could they say helpful, energetic, enthusiastic, creative, imaginative, fun to be around, spontaneous, exciting? Or do they say, oh, he's miserable, he's nasty, full of negativity, not a team player? I mean, you name it, the list can go on and on. So how would people describe you? How would they describe you? Think about it. Can it be all, is it, and, most of the time we try and aim for as positive as possible. Now, given everyone has their down days and their negative days, negative thoughts, whatever, but, what part really encompasses you? What words would you say that people speak about you when you're not there? Something to think about. He also talked about mastering the pitch. And a pitch is something that goes on every single day. A pitch could be called sales. A pitch could be called influence. Trying to get your kids out of bed. That's a pitch. Trying to, I don't know, find out, or say you want Italian for dinner, and then that could be a pitch to your wife. It's like, hey, babe, here's what we're going to eat tonight. I hope you're hungry. But yeah, pitches going on all the time. You can pitch your boss. You can pitch the sales guy who's buying a new car. It's all about influence. Who's trying to sell you the car. And ultimately what he says is, what is in it for the shark you are pitching? Because when you're pitching something, it's never about you. It's never, I want this, I need this, blah, blah, blah. It's, what can I do for you? And as long as you have a giving kind of mindset, that's when you start receiving, okay? And the way my mom put it is, if you want something to come into your hands can't be closed. It can't be about me. It can't be tight. It can't be rolled up. Your hands need to be open. So that way you can let things go, but at the same time, when you let things go, your hands are open so you can actually receive more into them. And it's the same kind of concept. So let's just say, for example, I work at Apple and I'm trying to sell you an Apple Watch. The reason you want to find out what that person wants and why they need it and how it's going to benefit them, as opposed to, I can sell an Apple Watch. Now, obviously, people who sell Apple don't necessarily get commission from it, but let's just say I did. Hey, I'm going to sell you the best Apple Watch, and in the back of my head, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to make this money, I'm going to make this money, I'm going to make this money. Then you totally ignore and neglect the things and the reasons why a person would be interested in it in the first place. So let's just say, for example, and he gave this one example. He said, a man sometimes will just buy something because maybe his kids want it. But did you take the time and the effort and the energy to figure that out? So if I go up to you and I say, hey, you know what? I love this watch, but tell me, what do you think you'd get out of this watch? And I can just show you the reasons, and I can provide the value to you and give you something that maybe, it might not even be something you want, but maybe your kid wants. So part of the pitch is find out what it will do for the other person and then just help guide them to it. And that's what I think he did for FUBU, because people wanted a brand that they could ultimately just come back to, where they can identify, okay, FUBU links up with hip-hop, links up with the type of clothing that hip-hop artists wear, that because the hip-hop artists wear, that I'm going to wear, and I want to be a hip-hop kind of guy, and I want to be on the cutting edge of everything that's going on. And he was able to take that, capture it, brand it, market it, and then turn it into a global name. Let's see. Shark Tank, which I didn't realize actually was the #1 show watched together by kids and parents. Fun fact for the day. And last but not least, K in Shark is to keep swimming. And a lot of times, and I know I've harped on this before, but that idea of plan, do, review, okay? That's a 3-step process that if you keep following this and following this and following this, so you plan what you're going to do, you do what you're going to do, and then you review what you did, it allows you to learn from your mistakes. And like I said from the beginning, okay, this started off with one kid who was making $2.25 an hour, all right? He was selling flyers. He could have stopped there, but he didn't. He went on to the next thing, and he said, well, you know what? I see an opportunity. And that's all you need is an opportunity, all right? You live in America. America, there are thousands of opportunities. Jim Rohn talks about it all the time. Opportunity here. Look, never, never, never run out of opportunities or something to try. Always keep your options open. So, Daymond found, hey, look, I have this whole group of hip-hop people. And then he started bumping into these rap artists, and then he saw them really making a name for themselves. He's like, well, I can do the same exact thing. And what he did was he saw a trend, he saw an opportunity, so he hopped on it. Hip hop hopped on it, no pun intended. And anyway, so he hops on this and he takes an idea and he thinks about it and he starts with a beanie. And he's like, well, if I can sell the beanie, then I can sell clothing. If I take the clothing and I put it on a rap artist, then I can sell that. Then I can do the branding and I can do the advertising on the outside of business owners' gates. And then from there, I can promote it even further and I'm going to sneak into a Las Vegas convention where I'm not supposed to be. Then I'm going to sell $300,000 worth of shirts. Then I'm going to get turned down by 27 plus banks and I'm going to go take my entire home. I'm going to put a lien against it. I'm going to put all this equipment in it. I'm going to start making shirts like crazy. Then I'm going to ship them out. And then I'm just going to blow up and go from there. And then I'm going to start 10 businesses. This didn't all happen at one time, okay? It's a lot of stuff that just over a period of time started to progress because he's a man that looked for opportunities. And, you know, I mean, look at where he is now. And he's, you know, probably later part of his 50s. But it's very inspiring to see this rag to riches story really just come to fruition. And to be able to even just sit 20 feet away from the guy and just see, you know, all these things he's able to do and kind of run through how he got to where he got was very inspiring. I love being able to see stories like this, guys. I hope you found something like this very helpful. If you were able to go, awesome. I'd love to get your opinion on it and see what you thought. Any maybe little corrections on some stuff I either might have misspoke about or just didn't catch. So, and again, a huge thank you to FAU. Again, like I said, I did graduate last year, so to be an owl and to see these events they put on is exciting, and to give us the opportunity to go out and see speakers like Daymond John is really helpful and influential. I'm going to try and put this on YouTube. If you thought this was also helpful and maybe you got a little nugget in some way, please put a comment below, hit like, hit subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to continue to keep trying to put out as much valuable content for you guys as possible, because I know when I see guys that are willing to put out content for free, it's super helpful to me. And for example, I know I had a couple buddies that weren't able to go on Thursday because they had prior commitments or had children and weren't able to watch the kids. So this one's for you guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon. Later.